Hello everyone and welcome back to this series of videos on the Solow growth model. Specifically in this video, we are going to look at how to define output and the aggregate equations that are associated with it. To begin with, let's start by saying that there are two main ways that we use to define output within the Solow growth model. The first one, we've extensively looked at it in the first video of this series, but just as a reminder, let's recall that it is given by the production function, which multiplies a factor A, which is called technology or total factor productivity, and it basically implies that it accounts for everything in output that is not explained by the interaction of capital and labor. So everything that is produced in terms of output that cannot be directly attributed to the interaction of capital and labor. And then, of course, this technology factor is, let's say, multiplied by a function of capital and labor that are our two factor inputs. Now it's time to introduce a new way of defining output, and specifically, this new way comes from the output expenditure model. So basically beginning from the expenditure approach to calculating GDP and something that relates very closely to A-level economics, and specifically the topic of the circular flow of income. What we mean here, let's do a quick recap. We know that income flows between firms and households. How does it flow? First of all, we know that firms kind of provide households with income. How does this happen? Because households or individuals provide, let's say, factors of production. So they provide labor with individuals working, they provide land, they provide capital, etc. All of these factors of production that are employed by the firm basically allow the firms themselves to give back some income to the households. Now that households have income, how do they spend it? Well, of course, they're going to spend it and give the money back to the firms. So this is the expenditure side. Thanks to the fact that they're going to be able to purchase goods and services here. And specifically, this side is where we define output. We know that goods and services define output in general. Again, this allows the firm to have the money to employ the factors of production, give income to the household, who's going to have the money to buy goods and services. And it just becomes a spiral. It just becomes a continuous flow. We also have to recall that there are some injections and withdrawals in this circular flow of income model. So we know that there are some injections that are defined as some external factors coming in that are not entirely determined within this circular flow of income. And specifically, they are coming from outside, such as exports, such as government expenditures or purchases, such as investment itself. But then there are also some withdrawals, so some kind of deficit parts that go out of our economy, let's say out of our country's circular flow, such as, for example, imports. This makes money go out because, of course, we're purchasing goods from abroad. Then there are savings and taxes more generally, but let's say that for the sake of our model, we want to focus on the withdrawal of income, on investment, government expenditure, and exports. This quick recap of the model leads us to defining expenditure as being equal to income and output, because all of the money that is basically spent into an economy is coming from income, and it's also in the form of output. Thanks to this, we can define the identity for aggregate demand, still from our A levels, as being equal to GDP or output, as being equal to summing up consumption plus investment plus government expenditure or purchases plus net exports, so exports minus imports. Again, here we have our expenditure side because we know that aggregate demand is defined as everything that is purchased within an economy, but we also have our output side, everything that is produced within an economy. Now, we can basically transfer this equation to defining output into our Solow growth model. We need to recall, however, two main points, two main assumptions that we did, again, already in our previous video. First of all, we need to recall that we have no government intervention here. So we know that savings are going to be exogenous, there are going to be no taxes, there are going to be no government purchases. We have no government into our Solow growth model economy. Also, we have to remember that there are no international links. Again, this is super important because it rules out trade and it rules out international flows of income. So all of the money that basically exists within an economy stays within that economy. There is not going to be any export, there is not going to be an import, any money sent abroad, nothing. So again, if we kind of write down our equation again, minus imports, well, we said that we have no government. So government expenditures are going to disappear from our equation. At the same time, we said we have no international links, so exports and imports are not contemplated. This is going to leave us with a new version of defining our output, aside from the production function into the Solow growth model, that is just going to be a sum of consumption and investment within the economy. Thank you everyone for listening, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video where we're going to discuss how capital is defined and how capital accumulation specifically is defined within our economy.